On the night of October 17, 2019, a 47-year-old woman named Ada Quintal stepped out of her family's wooden cabin in a rural area of Michigan to take a short walk with her dog and smoke a cigarette. It was very late, around 1:30 a.m. The cabin was extremely isolated, deep in the forest. It was about 800 meters away from the nearest neighbor, but Ada loved that isolation. She was surrounded on all sides by forests, swamps, and wilderness. Strangely enough, this environment made her feel safer than her main home in the crowded city of Detroit. The reason for that was an incident that had happened to her a few months earlier while she was in Detroit. She had been walking down the street in broad daylight, surrounded by people, when suddenly a man attacked her without any warning. He broke her nose, caused a concussion, then ran away and disappeared. The terrifying part wasn't just the assault itself. The man didn't know her at all. He didn't rob her. There was no argument, no previous conflict, no reason for him to choose her specifically. It was as if he picked her at random, attacked her, and vanished. Unfortunately, the attacker was never caught. That incident shattered Ada psychologically. It affected her mentally and physically. Her health began to decline, and on top of that, she lost her job as an engineer. She became unemployed, depressed, and overwhelmed. During that period, her uncle called her and asked if she could stay at the family's 2-story cabin in the forest to prepare it for winter, doing some light repairs and cleaning. He also told her he would pay her for the work. Ada was genuinely happy. It meant she would have a job again, solving her unemployment problem, and she would return to a place she deeply loved. The cabin had been in the family for 75 years, and her happiest childhood memories were tied to it. She saw the offer as a lifeline, a chance to escape the city, the crowds, and the fear, and return to her safe place. She hoped she could rebuild her life there, calm down, and recover psychologically from the trauma of the Detroit attack. For an entire week, she and her boyfriend stayed at the cabin, cleaning it and fixing minor things. 2 days later, her boyfriend had to leave and return to the city because they had work to do on another apartment they were preparing together. Now, Ada was alone in the cabin, with only her dog. For her, that was normal. She loved being alone, and a place like this didn't scare her at all. On the contrary, she felt very comfortable there. But that particular night, she was anxious and unable to sleep. About an hour earlier, she had taken a sleeping pill to help her rest, but it didn't work. Her body felt restless, her mind was racing, and anxiety was boiling inside her. So she told herself, "I'll take a short walk with the dog. Maybe I'll calm down and be able to sleep." The roads around the cabin were narrow and winding, with no streetlights at all. The forest surrounding them was pitch black, clearly not the safest place for a midnight walk. But Ada knew the area extremely well, like the back of her hand. On top of that, she had a 9mm handgun in her pocket for protection. After walking for a short while along the dark, twisting road near the cabin, her dog stopped by a tree to relieve itself. Ada stopped, lit a cigarette, and waited. Suddenly, the dog froze. It stopped what it was doing, turned its head slightly, its ears standing straight up, and began to growl, staring intensely into a specific spot in the darkness. Ada raised her flashlight and pointed the beam toward where the dog was looking. At that moment, the cone of light revealed 2 glowing eyes staring back at her from the darkness. From the very first second, she knew exactly what she was looking at. It was a mountain lion. She tried to stay calm. Slowly, she slipped her hand into her pocket to pull out her gun, but before she could, the glowing eyes blinked. Then she heard movement as the mountain lion turned and ran back into the forest. She was sure it was gone. Ada let out a long, shaky breath, grabbed her dog, and hurried back toward the cabin. When she reached it, the lights were on inside. She had left them on before going out. She climbed the small wooden front steps, opened the door quickly, went inside with her dog, and locked the door behind her. She unclipped the dog's leash, then grabbed her phone and sent a message to her boyfriend, telling him about the mountain lion she had just encountered. After sending the message, she felt some relief now that she was inside, but the tension inside her was still there. Just minutes ago, she had been only a few steps away from a mountain lion, alone in the forest, in the middle of the night, with no one else around. Suddenly, she heard a sound outside the living room window. It sounded like branches snapping, or a tree limb breaking, exactly like someone walking right beside the window. The cabin was laid out like this. As soon as you entered, you were in the kitchen. Directly behind it was the living room, all in one open space. An open American-style kitchen connected to the living area. There was also also a staircase leading up to the second floor. From where she stood in the kitchen, Ada had a clear view of the living room window, the source of the sound. But because the inside of the cabin was lit and the outside was completely dark, the window acted like a mirror. To see outside clearly, she would have to press her face close to the glass. Slowly, cautiously, she walked toward the window. Her heart was pounding as she leaned in and pressed her face against the glass to look outside. There was nothing there. Total darkness. No movement at all. She stepped back, and her mind began to race. Maybe it was the mountain lion. Maybe it had followed her back to the cabin. The thought was terrifying. But at least she was inside now, not outside. At the same time, she knew that mountain lions weren't known to behave like this. They don't usually stalk humans or circle houses like that. This wasn't normal behavior for them, and yet there was no other explanation, so she told herself,
"There's definitely nothing here. This place is safe. I'm just imagining things."
She pushed the thought out of her mind. She took off her jacket, placed her belongings on the table, sat down on the couch in the living room, turned on the television, and tried to calm herself. After about 20 minutes, she actually began to relax. She was almost ready to turn off the TV and go upstairs to sleep. Suddenly, she heard another sound, coming from the same living room window. This time, she lifted her eyes and looked toward the window. Despite the reflection from the lights inside, she could clearly make out that someone was moving outside. This time, it was unmistakable. It was not a mountain lion. It looked like a man. She barely managed to suppress a scream. Instinctively, she grabbed the handgun that was lying on the coffee table in front of the couch. Then she jumped behind the couch and crouched down, curling into herself so whoever was outside couldn't see her. Holding the gun tightly, she raised her voice and said,
"I have a gun. If you try to come in, I'll shoot."
There was no response. She fell silent and strained her ears, listening as hard as she could, trying to catch any sound of movement. She wanted to know where he was. Was he still standing by the window, or had he moved somewhere else? All she could hear was the wind hitting the cabin from all sides and the distant hoot of an owl somewhere deep in the forest. Just as she began to question herself, did I really see someone, or was it all in my head? She heard it clearly. Footsteps on the front porch stairs. Once again, she forced back a scream and rushed to the other side of the couch, making sure whoever was at the door couldn't see her through the window. She grabbed her phone and started dialing 911. Her finger hovered over the call button, but before pressing it, she stopped. Am I overreacting? She asked herself. Maybe I'm imagining things. Maybe it's an animal. Maybe this is all just fear. Leftover fear from what happened to me in Detroit. Deep down, she knew that ever since the random attack she'd survived that summer, everything scared her. Every sound, every shadow, even the smallest movement made her heart race with terror. She didn't want to embarrass herself or be judged as crazy if the police showed up and found nothing. So instead of calling 911, she decided to call her boyfriend. She called him. The phone rang while she stayed hyper-focused on every sound outside, but he didn't answer. It was almost 2:30 a.m., so there was a very good chance he was asleep. Right after that, she called one of her friends. Her friend answered, and she began telling her everything from the beginning in detail. How she'd gone out for a walk, seen a mountain lion, come back shaken, then heard a noise at the window, felt like someone was standing outside, and finally heard footsteps on the front porch stairs. I don't know if I'm imagining things or not, she told her, adding that she was absolutely terrified. Even though she was trying to keep herself together, her voice began to crack, and she started crying as she spoke. Her friend said over the phone, "Listen, I'm going to call the police for you. This clearly sounds like something that needs someone to come check on you. Give me the address." Ada gave her the address, but then said, "Please don't call the police yet. Just wait a bit. Let me check around the windows first and make sure there's really nothing there. If I see anything, then call them." Her friend replied, "Okay, but be quick. I'm calling them either way." Holding the gun in one hand and her phone in the other, Ada began crawling slowly behind the couch, keeping herself low, below the level of the windows, so no one outside could see her. She crawled from the living room into the kitchen, moving toward the front of the house. She stopped at the sink, above which was a window window overlooking the front porch stairs. Very slowly, she raised her head until her eyes were level with the glass, peering through a small gap to see what was outside. She looked carefully. There was no one there. The entrance was completely empty. All she could see was darkness and forest. A sound escaped her, somewhere between a laugh and a sob. From sheer relief mixed with embarrassment, she felt like she'd imagined everything, that all this terror was just the result of her shattered nerves. She was about to tell her friend, "I'm sorry, there's no one here. I guess I was just too anxious. Don't call the police." But before she could speak, she turned to look toward the living room. She froze in place. In the same living room window, the one where she had heard the noises earlier, there were two clear shadows of two men standing right outside, staring at her. They were as clear as daylight. Without a second thought, she immediately raised the gun and aimed it at them. The nightmare was that they raised their weapons too, pointing them straight at her. Ada started firing at the window. From her perspective, the men fired back. A gunfight broke out between them before she dropped to the floor to protect herself. She was almost certain she had hit one of them in the head. She hit the ground as the world exploded into gunfire and shattering glass. Her friend, still on the phone, was screaming, yelling her name.
"What's going on? What's happening over there?"
All Ada could say to her was,
"There are two men shooting at me. I think I shot one of them."
Her friend said to her,
"I'm going to call the police right now."
and suddenly, the line went dead. Ada was now hiding behind the kitchen table, holding the gun, adrenaline coursing through her body as she tried to listen for any sound. But suddenly, there was complete silence. No gunfire at all. She said to herself,
"Maybe I killed both of them. That's why the shooting stopped."
But immediately, another thought crept into her mind. Maybe only one of them was hit, and the other was still alive, moving around right now, from place to place, planning to take revenge on her. As she was trying to decide what to do, she suddenly heard a very heavy thudding sound above her on the second floor. It sounded like someone walking forcefully back and forth on the floor above. Ada knew that at this moment, she was supposed to grab her dog, open the door, and run into the forest, far away from the cabin altogether. If the person upstairs was one of the attackers, then the cabin itself had become the most dangerous place to be, while the forest outside would be empty and safe. But she stayed crouched behind the table, gripping the gun, her mind drifting to something else. She remembered the attack that happened to her in Detroit, how her life had been turned upside down afterward, how she became afraid of everything, how that fear left her feeling helpless all the time. She thought to herself, how long am I going to keep running? The sound of footsteps above her was still going on. An armed man walking inside her family's home, the place she had loved since she was a child. And in that moment, she decided she wouldn't run anymore. She said,
"I'm going to stand my ground and face it."
She took a deep breath and stood up, lifting the gun in her hand, and began to climb the stairs that led to the upper floor, stepping slowly and cautiously. About half an hour later, the police returned to the cabin because her friend had indeed called them, reporting that she had heard gunfire and that there might be two armed individuals and that Ada may have shot one of them. The police arrived, prepared for the worst-case scenario. They raised their weapons and moved around the cabin, first searching outside. There was no one. Everything was completely silent. They entered the cabin, and it was obvious that a firefight had taken place inside. Broken glass everywhere, bullets embedded in the walls, ceiling, and floor. But after searching room by room, all the way to the second floor, they found no one. Neither Ada nor any sign of the supposed attackers. What they did find was her dog inside, frightened but unharmed. Once they confirmed there was no immediate threat inside, they expanded their search around the cabin, looking for any evidence to explain what had happened, or what could have happened to her or the attackers. During this second search, they discovered Ada's boots and her phone on the cabin's roof, and her gun on the ground near the area under the roof. The evidence suggested that she either went up to the roof and came back down via the stairs, or she jumped from the roof, leaving her boots behind, her phone on the roof, and her gun dropping to the ground. Other than that, there was no trace of her or any other person. The police immediately launched a large search in the surrounding forest. They searched in every direction, but found no sign of Ada or the attackers. They considered the possibility that the attackers she had shot ran to a hospital, checking all nearby hospitals for anyone admitted with gunshot wounds, but there were no such cases. Then suspicions arose about the story itself. Were there really attackers? Could her boyfriend have harmed her or orchestrated orchestrated the incident. When investigators looked into it, they found her boyfriend had a solid alibi. He had been with his older son from a previous marriage in the city, and the boy confirmed he was with his father the entire time. They investigated whether her boyfriend could have hired someone to harm her, checking bank accounts and any history of disputes between them, but found nothing. No strange transactions, no serious conflicts, no reason for him to hire anyone to hurt her. Thus, her boyfriend was cleared from suspicion. After further investigation, the police confirmed that the random attack she had suffered in Detroit that summer was real, but the man who attacked her was never caught. Some investigators theorized that maybe this man had been following her to the cabin to finish the job, but that scenario seemed highly unlikely, so it was dismissed. As each day passed, the case became stranger. The bullets found inside the cabin, all embedded in walls, ceiling, and floor, came from a single gun, Ada's, but they also found many shell casings inside and outside that appeared to be from different types of guns, suggesting the presence of other attackers with different weapons. The case grew more mysterious, and days went by with no trace of Ada or any attackers. Some speculated that she might have staged her disappearance to start a new life, or that she had been kidnapped by unknown parties, with some even claiming alien abduction. Eventually, the case went cold, with no progress, until December 21st, 2019, roughly 2 months after Ada's disappearance. Her family decided to make a desperate attempt. There was a small pond near the cabin, which police had previously searched. They decided to drain the pond completely, hoping to find her body or any clue, no matter how slim the chance. They brought in water pumps and drained the pond, finding Ada's body about 275 meters from the cabin, submerged under roughly 30 centimeters of water. At first, it appeared she had been chased, killed, and fallen into the pond, but upon initial examination, it was completely different. There were no bullets in her body, no major bruises, no deep wounds, no signs of a physical struggle before her death. If she hadn't drowned, the cause of death was unclear. The mystery began to unravel when the medical examiner performed a full autopsy. It revealed that after the random attack in Detroit that summer, Ada had been psychologically strained far more than her family and friends realized. She had begun coping with her trauma and anxiety through drugs and medications. On the night of the cabin incident, she was extremely stressed and unable to sleep. She had taken Valium, a powerful sedative, along with an anti-anxiety medication. Yet even with the drugs, she couldn't sleep, so she went for a walk with her dog to clear her mind and smoke. But what she smoked wasn't ordinary cigarettes. It was methamphetamine, commonly known as meth. Meth is a very strong stimulant, making the user feel awake, powerful, confident, and motivated. For Ada, it countered the feelings of helplessness she had experienced since the attack. But meth has a major side effect: extreme paranoia, making one suspect everything and imagine things that aren't real. That night, under the influence of Valium, anti-anxiety medication, and meth, she genuinely saw a real mountain lion, which alone would terrify anyone. Although the lion left, her adrenaline and fear did not subside. The meth heightened her paranoia rather than calming her, so when she returned to the cabin, every sound was interpreted as a threat. When she looked out the window and thought she saw men, it was actually her own reflection in the glass. The interior lights were stronger than the darkness outside, but her mind, under meth's influence, interpreted it as armed attackers coming to kill her. When she raised her gun toward them, she saw them raise their guns in response, but this was just the reflection of her own movement. The footsteps upstairs were likely wood creaking, branches hitting the cabin, or the wind, natural nighttime forest sounds. But her mind was in a state of extreme paranoia, interpreting everything as if people were moving above her, searching for her. The police concluded that she had gone to the upper floor, then onto the roof, to escape the imagined attackers in her mind. She had left her phone and boots on the roof, dropped her gun when she jumped, and ran into the forest, ending up about 275 meters from the cabin. She ultimately fell into the shallow pond where they found her. The final report concluded that her death was not from drowning, but from severe hypothermia combined with drug toxicity, a lethal mix of the substances in her system and the physical exertion. Her body could not withstand the cold, the effort, and the drugs, and she died alone in the shallow water in the middle of the forest. In the end, the danger Ada had been trying to escape her entire life, the reason she left the city for the forest, and the reason she fought attackers on that night existed only in her mind. I hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell to get all new stories, and share this video with all your friends who love horror and true stories. See you in the next video. Goodbye.